Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to make a card for this month's challenge over at Uniko Studio, and this time the theme is anything goes, and I wanted to make a card using the wonderful flower dies from Uniko Studio. And I'm starting off with a standard European A6 card base as usual, and I'm also cutting a piece of the same cardstock slightly smaller than my card base. And I want to have an orange, a bit the tangerine-like color in the background, so I'm adhering my white panel to a piece of orange cardstock, and then I'm trimming it down using my paper trimmer. I never measure anything, so I don't really know the exact measurements of the white panel, and therefore it's easier for me to make a mat by just adhering the white panel on the large piece of cardstock and trimming it, instead of measuring and cutting the orange cardstock to the right size. And when the panel is done, I'm just making sure that it fits in my card base and that I like the way it looks. And then I'm going to cut the flowers, and for this I'm using the same orange cardstock that I used before and also a piece of turquoise cardstock. And I cut the middle size flower in orange and the two other ones in turquoise. Then I'm going to use the matching stamps and just stamp the images in matching ink color. This way I just get a subtle image on the flowers. And I'm using distressing for this in the colors Spice Marmalade and Evergreen Bough. And since the stamps are clear, it is very easy to line them up with the die and get a perfectly stamped image. And I wanted to have some banners peeking out from behind the flower, and I decided to use some washi tape for this. So I just looked through my stash of washi tape and I found a few matching colors, and I ended up using two blue ones and two orange ones that matched perfectly with the paper that I had used. But before I started adhering the washi tape, I added some color splatters on my panel. I should probably have done this before I added the orange cardstock in the back, but this is not a big deal. But to make sure that I don't get any color onto the orange cardstock, I'm using my masking tape to cover it up. Then I'm bringing out my non-stick craft mat from Ranger, and I'm using the distress inks that I had used for stamping earlier, and I'm just adding the colors onto the craft mat. And since the craft mat has a slick surface, the distress inks will stay wet and I can use it directly from the mat. To get them even more wet, I am spraying them with some water, and then I'm just using a small paintbrush and I'm just gently tapping the paintbrush to get the ink to splatter onto the card. And a tip for storing the craft mat is to reuse an empty paper towel roll and just roll up the craft mat and put it into the roll. This is so cheap and a very easy way to store the craft mat. And then it's time for the washi tape banners, and I'm using washi tape from My Mind's Eye, and I'm not really sure what collections they're from, but I will try my best to find out and add the links in the description bar below. And I'm using my Ranger scissor to cut banner ends on the washi tape, and as usual I am cutting a small slit in the middle, and then I cut from the corners to the end of the slit to get a perfect banner shape. Then I'm adhering the pieces to my panel, and I used my large flower die cut to measure and make sure that I cut my washi tape to the right size. And to get some more dimension, I decided to tape two of the colors onto some white cardstock and then trim them out using my Fiskars trimmer. This way they become a bit thicker and opaque and will give the card a little bit more interest. I really love to use washi tape this way, and by making the tape opaque you can use it for a lot of different techniques, and you can even use it as pattern paper. The transparent washi tape is really fun too, but it does have a bit of a limited usage since you always see what you put behind it. I didn't really have any plan on where I was going to add the tape, so I ended up moving the pieces around quite a bit before I finally found a placing that I liked. And then I went ahead and adhered the flowers to the panel, and I adhered the larger one with my Tombow tape runner and then the two smaller ones with foam squares to get some dimension to the card. I'm not really worried about bulk or anything like that, and the cards are easy and cheap to send by mail anyway, and I really love the 3D effect that the foam squares give. And what card is done without a few enamel dots? These ones that I use are from an old collection from My Mind's Eye, but I do think that they are still available in a few shops, and I will try and find them and add a link for you in the supply list below. And then when looking at my card, I thought that it needed a bit more interest and the splatters weren't really visible enough, so I used a small solid circle from the stamp set from Stamps of Life. This set is called Thanks for 1 year, and you get this as a bonus when you have been subscribing to Stamps of Life for a period of 12 months. So unfortunately I can't add a link for this stamp set, but there is plenty of stamp sets out there with similar stamps. I will try and find something similar for you. And I'm stamping this tiny little circle in both the distress inks that I have been using throughout the card. This way I'm adding some larger dots among the splatters, and when stamping I get a bit more intense color than when splattering. I'm also using the sentiment from this stamp set, and it says thank you, and I'm stamping this in jet black archival ink above my washi tape banners. And I still thought that the card needed a little bit more, and I used this stamp set from Simon Says Stamp called Best Mom Ever. I got this stamp set in a stamp kit from Simon Says Stamp a while back, but you can still get the stamp set from their shop. I have added a link to this set below as well. This set has a few circle outlines, and I used the smallest of the circles and stamped in both colors all around the card. These tiny outlines give the card a little bit of interest without adding too much color and making the card messy. I really like to use stamps like this on my cards. This stamp set also has some nice small hearts, and I decided to add a few of them to the card as well. I just added 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom since I didn't really have any room for more large images. And I think that these hearts really added something extra to the card, and I'm glad I decided to try and use them on this card. When the panel is finally complete, I am adhering it to my card base using my Tombow tape runner, and I'm adding quite a lot of adhesive here since the panel is pretty heavy and I don't want it to fall off. And the stamp set from Simon Says Stamp had a really beautiful sentiment that says thank you for the many wonderful things in my life. And since the thank you sentiment on the front is very small, I decided to stamp another sentiment on the inside of the card as well. But since the front said thank you, I didn't want to repeat that on the inside, so I used my masking tape and masked off the thank you from the stamp, and then I inked it up with my Spiced Marmalade Distress ink. I did get some ink on my acrylic block here, so I'm just wiping that off with a baby wipe before stamping to make sure that I don't get any smudges on the inside of the card. And then I stamped a small heart in the Evergreen Bow Distress ink on the inside as well. This way it kind of ties the front and inside together. And honestly, I almost like the inside better than the front, and I am thinking of making a second card that looks just like the inside of this one. And that was my card for today. I hope you liked it, and don't forget to take part in the Uniko Studio challenge this month. There are some fabulous prizes you can win, and you can check out the complete challenge rules on the Uniko Studio blog. I will add the link in the description bar below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time.